Today, I want to take some time to talk about value. Value. You see, there is something I struggle with, and I'll be very honest with you. A great thing I struggle with right now at this point in my life, doing this podcast, making this content, teaching. One thing I struggle with when I'm on my own is I have thoughts of whether or not what I'm doing through this podcast or through my speaking is valuable. I struggle with that. Is it valuable? Is it valuable? Are people getting any value from this? I know just a couple of days, I was in this depth, in the pit of this self-questioning, self-doubting emotion. And I remember that night, I asked my wife, I said, is this thing really valuable? This thing I'm committing myself to, is it really valuable? Is it? Because I don't know. I don't know if it's valuable. And my wife asked me why I was feeling that way. And I told her, a lot of people tell me it's good. It's good. It helps them, but I doubt if it's valuable to them, especially in today's world. I doubt if it's what people really want to hear. I doubt it. Because I don't see too many people share this content like something that is valuable. And I told my wife, if something is valuable, people don't keep it to themselves. So for me, I was looking at how it was being shared and I thought, it cannot be that valuable because, some people contact me on WhatsApp, tell me, oh, this was really good content. Really good content you did here. It really helped me. But then when I look at it, they don't share it. You understand? I don't see them share it. I've never seen them share it before. You understand? On their status and stuff. But then they tell me it's valuable. And for me, sometimes I struggle with that. I'm like, how can this person tell me that this thing really helped them? And they're not willing to share it with the people in their circle. You understand? They're not willing to put it out there. For me, it was contradicting my perception of value. So I thought to myself, is this thing really valuable? Is it really valuable? And that night, me and my wife, we had some time to think about it. Even though we couldn't reach any serious conclusion, we didn't have any serious closure about how to judge whether it was valuable or not. I expressed myself, and that made me feel better to even onboarding, because sometimes I internalize these things, and just sharing it with my wife just allowed me to just hear myself think, and it released some of the pressure. But then this is where I feel we have the wrong impression or definition of the word value. We have the wrong definition of the word value. And a lot of times what we think of as value, when we want to categorize something as valuable or not, what we always think of is whether it is marketable. So a lot of times we confuse valuable for marketable or marketable for valuable. They are two different words. The essence are different. essence of these two words are not the same. The essence is not the same. They are very different. What it means to be valuable doesn't always mean that that thing is marketable. And because something is marketable doesn't always justify its intrinsic value. Something can be empty in value but high in demand when it's taken to the market. Something can be destructive but highly marketable. Marketability looks at how much people's response to it and how much they are willing to even pay for it, and how easy it is to circulate it and share it. That's what marketability is. What's the market response? What's people's response? Looks at the hype factor. And that's why you would realize, even in the music industry, in today's music industry, the fact that your music has good lyrics, lyrics that build, lyrics that minister, lyrics that inform, doesn't mean that you would get a record label signing. In fact, a lot of record labels or record label execs don't listen in for the value in your music. They look out for the marketability. So you can be singing anything. You can be singing a language that people do not understand. You can be chanting words that don't make sense. They do not look out for that. They look out for the marketability. In the end, it's about what do they feel the response of the people would be, and how easy it would be to circulate this thing and get paid for it. So here I was looking at the virality of my content. And I thought, if it's valuable, it will be viral. It will be everywhere. People would share. But that's a mistake we make about value. And it puts us under a lot of pressure. We look at marketability. Now, I would say this here. A lot of times, you realize that what has value is marketable. You understand? Intrinsic value, but it's not always that way. It's not always that way, and it's not immediately that way. I know when my wife and I had this conversation, I didn't have any clarity concerning this till about 2 days later, when we were having devotion and we were reading the Bible. And we read from the book of Genesis, and we read the story of Joseph, who was sold by his brothers into captivity in Egypt and worked as a slave, and from there was thrown into prison when he was falsely accused of something. Now, in prison, he met two prisoners that both had dreams. Now, these two prisoners used to be ex-staff of the Pharaoh of Egypt. One was the bread maker, and the other one was the cupbearer. They both had dreams. I don't know whether they had it the same night, maybe I can't remember. But then they both had dreams that confused them. And one way or the other, Joseph came around to interpret the dreams. Now, in interpreting the dreams, he told the bread maker that Pharaoh was going to execute him. And he told the cupbearer that Pharaoh was going to reinstate him and bring him back to his office as cupbearer. So one was going to die, the other one was going to have a promotion from jail back to the palace. But when he was talking to the cupbearer, he said something. He said, when you get out, please remember me and tell Pharaoh about me. In today's world, that would be interpreted as please share and subscribe and click the notification button. He told him, this thing I've done for you, I know it's of value, so please share. When you get out, please share. Make it go viral. And it says that immediately the cupbearer left jail. Things happened that very way. The bread maker was killed and the cupbearer was reinstated to serve Pharaoh. And it said immediately the cupbearer left, he forgot about Joseph. And the thought of Joseph never crossed his mind. He didn't think of him again. Not even for a second. Totally forgot about him. Even though this man had given him something of immense value. Now it says that 2 full years later, Pharaoh had a dream. And the dream confused him. And he called all his wise men and magicians to interpret the dream, and none of them could interpret the dream. So the cupbearer, who is normally there with the king, the cupbearer then was like a PA, you understand, to the king, heard this and remembered at that time, 2 years later, 24 months later, he remembered the content that he had consumed from this man in jail called Joseph. And he said, can I share this content with you, Your Majesty? I think it might help you. It was then that he remembered. Now, when I read this scripture, it redefined what value meant. What Joseph did for the cupbearer in jail was incredibly valuable. It was incredibly valuable, the interpretation of the dream. But then the cupbearer still forgot immediately he left. He left jail. Immediately he left the prison, he forgot. Totally. Even though what had happened was spectacular, he forgot and didn't tell anybody about it for 2 whole years. He didn't see it as marketable. So that made me know that, Tola, this thing you are saying, if something is really valuable, people will not be able to keep it to themselves. God told me that is not always true. That is not always true. Sometimes something is incredibly valuable and people would forget the next minute. The next minute they will forget. Something is incredibly valuable and people are not excited about sharing it at that time. It doesn't mean it is not valuable. Marketability and value are not the same thing. Some things have no value. No value. The value level is so small. But then They're incredibly marketable. Some things are destructive and people cannot wait to share them. Value is not in external validation. The cupbearer proved it. It's not in external validation. If it was external validation, he would leave jail telling every single person about this experience of this wonderful man he met in jail that interpreted his dream. He would tell he said, the Bible says he didn't have a second thought about Joseph. So it wasn't the fact that he didn't have the opportunity. He was looking for the opportunity. No, his mind never went to Joseph again and the great value he has received from him. So marketability, people's ginger to put it out there, is not the mark of value. And that got me thinking, if marketability is not how you judge value, how do you now judge value? How do you know what you are doing is valuable? Because I want to believe that this thought I'm having is not unique to me. There are some of you are doing stuff, but then followers, little. Shares, little. Likes, little. So you're beginning to doubt whether what you're doing is of value. You're beginning to doubt it because it doesn't seem marketable. It doesn't seem infectious. It doesn't seem to be going viral. But yet you watch a video of somebody slapping another person and you look at the views, 2 million views, 200,000 shares of somebody slapping somebody else. Make that make sense. I'm kind of think, what's the value in that? But that's marketable. It's marketable. It's not valuable. It's not valuable. So how do we judge value? If it's not by people's external response, because a lot of people tell us, a lot of motivational speakers tell us, look for value, that thing that people cannot but acknowledge. That thing that people see and they just want to have it immediately. That thing that people see and they want to put their hand in their pocket to say, I want to buy this thing. So value has always been defined as the external response to your offer. What you put out there, what the external response is the value. So if you are doing business, your business is only valuable by how many people patronize you. I used to watch this thing called Shark Tank. And a lot of times people will come and talk about their valuation of their business. And they judge their valuation by how much in terms of sales they have made. And that's what makes the investor feel like, I want to invest in this thing or not. But there's some people that come, they haven't gotten too many clients. So they bring their product. And you can see the investors. Once they hear that the valuation, the amount, the marketability is not high, a lot of them do not invest. They're like, no, this thing has not been tested with people. The testing is too low. So they don't invest because they don't see the value in it. So how do we judge value if value is not defined by how marketable something is? How do you know what you are doing is of value? And the answer was in the Bible, or is in the Bible. There's a story in the Bible, in the New Testament. It's about Jesus. And it says Jesus was in the midst of a multitude. He was trying to find his way, walking through the multitude. I don't know where he was walking to. I can't remember the actual context of the story. But he was in the midst of a lot of people. And it was said that a woman with the issue of blood, she had been bleeding for years, uncontrollably, touched his garment. And immediately she was healed. The bleeding stopped. Now I need you to pay attention here to what happened next. This is how value is determined. Immediately in the midst of that multitude, Jesus stopped and said, "Who touched me?" Now, when I'm talking about a multitude, they were nose to nose. People were touching him all over. He was rubbing his body against people. But he stopped and said, "Somebody touched me." And the next statement he said, "Because virtue, which is also known as value, has left me." He said, "Virtue has just left me." That verse right there is how we judge value. Value is not in the external response or validation of the people outside towards what you are doing. Value is the feeling of emptiness, of pouring out yourself, of zapping of some energy within you. That something has left you. That something has left you. The true measure of value is in a feeling of being depleted. That is how you know what you are doing is valuable. It's actually when you feel depleted. But not depleted in a bad way, but depleted in a functional way. You do that thing and you feel like you have poured yourself out. That is how you know that what you are doing is valuable. Even if nobody says, "Oh, that was so good. Oh, I love that. Oh, I can't wait to share that." In you, you feel, you begin to pant. You pant on the inside like, wow, that took a lot. It is that release of a godly energy that you feel depleted. That is the mark and the true validation of value. Immediately I read that verse, I realized that Jesus did not wait for anybody to say, "Oh, I've been healed." He didn't wait for that confirmation to know that what he had done was valuable. He knew by how much had left him, not how much was said about what had left him. He didn't need the woman to say she was healed. He knew that he had given her something she needed. Sometimes something leaves you and it takes people 2 years, like it took the cupbearer 2 years to understand that, "Whoa, I messed up. Oh. For 2 years, I didn't understand how much value this guy gave me." It took 2 years for the guy to catch up with the level of value that had left Joseph. Sometimes when you give out your stuff, the response is limited. Sometimes people say, "Oh, Dad, what did you say? You didn't say anything that made sense. What's he doing? Doesn't really make sense." They haven't caught up with the value. But you, on the inside, know what has left you. If you are working, and at the end of the work, you do not feel righteously depleted, and I mean righteously depleted, that means depleted towards the right thing I don't mean righteous as in holy. I mean righteous as in depleted to in the right way, towards the right thing. You feel depleted, but it feels good. You feel you have been used. You've poured yourself out. Then what you're doing is of value. It doesn't matter how many people are in a hurry to get it, in a hurry to share it, how marketable it is. Value has nothing to do with the market reaction. It has to do with your internal reaction. Does it empty you? Are you pouring out? And immediately, I knew that what I was doing in teaching was valuable. Because every time I teach, record the podcast, I feel a sense of being depleted. I feel like virtue has left me. I feel I need a topping up every time. And God was telling me that there is how you know what you're doing is valuable. It's when you feel like you've been poured. That's why the Apostle Paul, at the time of his death, did not say, "Oh, I've started so many churches. I've turned so many people to believers." He said, "I have run the good race." I actually feel some level of tiredness. I have poured myself out. Jesus too said, "He poured myself out like a drink offering." It is how you feel about what you are doing, how much of yourself is taken from it. When you are doing something valuable, it can be a very dangerous thing because it depletes. That's why when you read the Bible, a lot of times Jesus had to take time away, retreat from the crowd because the depletion was much. He had to go and recharge again. How you know value is what you are doing. Does it feel like you are depleting whenever you do it? Righteously, not destructively. Depleting means you feel like you have been fully utilized. You know, when a machine that has a battery is fully utilized, the battery will run down. The battery will run down because you've been using it. If you're using a laptop, you use it. Because you are using it, it's giving you so much of its energy. At the end of the day, you need to plug it back in because it has given out value. Is that righteous depletion? That is value. It's not how people react. It's not how many people share. It's not how viral it goes. It's value. It's value. Value is how you feel you have poured yourself into something. How much of yourself you've poured. Not other people's reaction. It's how much of yourself you've poured. I remember when I used to work as a logo designer, a graphic designer. Look, in my early days, I had no clients, and no social media to share my work. So no clients, no audience. But every time after working, I would feel at the end of the day like, wow, that was a day's job right there, man. That was a hard day's work. You understand? I would just feel like I have been depleted. I've poured myself creatively, but nobody paid a dime. In fact, nobody saw it and said it was good. There was no likes, no shares, no nothing, no social media. It was just me looking at it. But then the value was like I felt like I had poured. I felt like I had released some spirituality out there. I felt like virtue had left. So I want to talk to somebody today. You are being very concerned about virality, marketability, people's reaction, and you're beginning to question your value. No. I think your value is tethered to how you feel when you do what you do. How much of your DNA, how much of your emotions, how much of your spirit, how much of your attention goes into that thing. When people take that thing, when people consume that thing, they must be consuming a little chunk of you. That's what it means. Value is how much of yourself you release, not how much of praise that people give you. It's how much of yourself you release. I hope this makes sense to somebody as much as it made sense to me. That in the long run, it is how much of yourself you give. How much of you that thing has. That is value. It's the surrender of yourself to be given to something, to be drained by something. That even when you give it out and people do not even react, you can say that I've given out. I need to recharge. Reading this verse, reading about Joseph and Jesus, gave me a lot of clarity. It gave me a lot of peace, and it gave me a lot of hope. And it's my prayer today that I'm able to transfer that peace and that hope to somebody listening to the podcast right now who has decided to give up on what they are doing because they do not feel it's valuable. I really hope that somebody is able to key in to this revelation and get clarity that you decide value, not people on the outside. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi, and this is the TA Podcast.